till you'll turn it over to me on the Drexel slides. Is that the plan?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, got it.
And
Okay.
I'm gonna blow.
Speaking. Welcome everyone. My name is Divya Pawar and I'm a training coordinator at the Temple Small Business Development Center. We help small businesses start and grow, and we're doing this through consulting over the phone or through Zoom and with robust calendar of training events. You're here for the Food Business Series New Product Development webinar. This is the last in the 9-part series, and it will cover how to branch out to add new products to your offerings. We will also have office hours tomorrow from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. where you can ask specific questions. For the webinar, we have all the attendees muted, and we encourage you to put your questions in the chat or Q&A. All attendees will receive the presentation recording after the webinar. This webinar will be presented by George Atela and Mark Lamondon from Tandem Associates. And with that, I will turn the floor to Mark.
Yes, right. Thank you, Divya. Good evening, everybody. For those of you in the Philadelphia area, thanks for hanging in there with us. Hope you're all staying safe. And Kim, thanks for sending your bad weather from one of the other sessions out our way. Appreciate that very much. Okay, so tonight's our last night other than the boot camp. And actually, before we get started, George, why don't you talk a little bit about the boot camp and see if we can get people all jumped up about that.
Absolutely, Mark. Yeah, I'll have a slide a little later, but we, as we said all along, for those of you that are here for the first time, obviously you're hearing this, for the first time, but we are having a session next Saturday. So not this Saturday, but Saturday, 9/11. And we're calling it our boot camp. This is the third time we're doing this. And basically what we are going to do in the morning is kind of go over very quickly, kind of a Cliff Notes version of all the presentations that we've had. And then for those of you that are interested in participating that might need a little more, help or coaching or guidance, we're going to have some sessions in the morning specifically for the people that want to present. We'll take a short break for lunch, and then we'll start around noon. And then we'll go as long as everybody wants to present. So it's kind of like a round robin thing. I think last time we had about 6 or 7 people present. The first time I think we had about 7 or 8 people present. So usually it's 10 or 15 minute session. Some are shorter, but usually we kind of cut it at 10 to 15 minutes. And it'll give you a really good idea of all the things you need to do to really be ready for prime time or to present your product. In fact, in our slide presentation, then I do have a couple of examples of some companies and concepts and things like that, things you really want to be polished up on before you really talk to a retailer. So I'll go over the outline in a little bit when I start my session. But again, I've said this before. This is your chance. There's no no risk here. So this is your chance to kind of pitch us on your idea. You will get constructive criticism from us. We will give you our honest opinion. But the good news is you're better off if you're going to make a mistake. You're better off making a mistake now than making a mistake in front of the customer. So I'll talk a little more about that in a bit when I come back.
Yeah, and it's a really good confidence booster too for you on a couple of different levels, because you'll get some good feedback as well. All right, so let's jump into our new products discussion for the night. Things we're going to be covering: what drives success. We'll talk a little bit about the new product development process itself, but most of you are sort of already there on some levels, so we don't want to spend a lot of time on that. What kind of research tools are available to help guide us? The science side of new product development, which George will take you through, which is really some great stuff. And then how new products fit overall in your category. So those are the core ideas we're going to cover. Okay, so we've talked about this a number of times as we presented over the weeks. It's important that you are addressing a need or solving a problem for consumers with your new product. It can't just be a good idea to you and the circle around you. It needs to be addressing some kind of need. It should deliver great experience if you can. Obviously it depends on what kind of product or service you're coming out with, but that's another benefit for sure to driving some success. You want to provide some kind of support behind it. Somehow you have to get people aware of your product and try it. And we talked a good bit about that last week in our consumer and trade promotion session, but most of you won't be able to afford traditional stuff like advertising and all, but certainly a good website, good social media plan, and going out and getting some kind of distribution out there, whether it's food trucks or food shows or community events, whatever it might be, is definitely something you need to get jump started. So Nielsen, in one of their reports, and we're going to have some more data from IRI that'll show you in a little bit. Basically, again, it's articulating something that we've been banging on, which is you need to make sure you're delivering against something that people want and clearly articulating that, whether it's in your packaging, in your messaging, or whatever. So product performance is a key driver of success for many retail food products. Very often you can have an emotional appeal as well. So, and that might be one of the things that you're leaning on as a point of difference, but the product's really got to deliver, and it's got to be, obviously taste in a food product's important, but if there's other components of it that are important, whether there's, the source of ingredients or the recipe or whatever, that's all part of it. About half of those that fail don't actually deliver on a need, and I'm surprised it's actually that low. I would think it would be even higher than that those fail, but you definitely want to, and that's a broad definition of what a consumer need is, but you definitely, as we've said, address that that you're solving a problem or addressing a need. And the whole satisfying experience is definitely what we hear from Nielsen as well in terms of what drives success. These are reasons that new product development efforts will fail: not enough upfront involvement or feedback from consumers. If you can, you want to talk to people. If you're going to ask for people to carry it in their stores, you want to get some feedback from some of those people, and you can. And without a doubt, back to the whole boot camp idea, that's one of the things we can help you with in the boot camp presentation, is sort of challenging you from a trade perspective and what kind of hurdles you're going to have to overcome. Sometimes the loose process can, get you too far along. In your case, you're only talking to your friends and family, getting feedback. That can be a dangerous area. You want to get some outside input. And then, sometimes focus is an issue. Like we've talked in the past about target audience and stuff. Sometimes we all believe that everybody will like our product. That's not the case. You need to get very narrowed down into who you think is your best target audience, and then focus on them as you go through. And then other issues are, very often it's you or maybe one other family member or close friend that's helping you, and so it's tough to get started, and sometimes you can bite off more than you can deal with. So make sure that you're not stretching yourself too far, and include other people if you need them. Okay, so with COVID-19, obviously most of us are well aware of some of the things that have happened. Without a doubt, e-commerce has really jumped ahead of where the projections were for how many people would be adopting online purchasing and delivery. But because of the COVID situation, it really got much further ahead than expected, which can create its own challenges for trying to get some distribution for newer products. But one of the good things is that it's led people to become more open-minded to trying all different kinds of products. They didn't just go in and buy what they normally bought, and move on to the next thing. They actually sat there and tried some new things, and that can be good for products like yourselves. So make sure that you're doing a compelling story, and that, as we've talked about, everything, it's persuasive, it's recognizable, it's got a benefit in it, and you're creating some of that passion in the messaging. These are some of the trends that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic. Togetherness, certainly we've all experienced this firsthand ourselves, that for a while we were hunkered down. Now up until very recently, people were starting to go out again and celebrate and be with family and friends and go to events. It's a little bit curtailed at the moment, but that's definitely something that we're seeing shift out. Health and wellness, people definitely have become more and more concerned about foods from that perspective, but the pandemic certainly expanded that level of interest in some of those things. People are more concerned than ever about the environment, about things going on with our country, our planet, all the outside sort of driving forces. And that's important as you get down the road. If there's things that you're doing well from a sustainability or perspective or whatever, you want to make sure you're telling people about that. If you're using all natural ingredients, if you're buying stuff that's not, that's organic or whatever it might be, those are really good things to make sure you're delivering on, because more and more consumers care about that. At-home cooking, it definitely saw a huge increase during the pandemic, and all the research that I've seen suggests that it's going to stay at higher levels than it was, but it'll definitely, scale back from the real high levels of like March and April of the COVID situation a year ago. But it's definitely going to be a trend that sticks around. More and more people are going to be cooking for a while at home, rather than just going out to eat, or convenience foods or fast foods or whatever it would be. So that's an important element to keep in mind. Global flavors have been growing in interest for a long time. They continue to grow because of all the trends up above that we just talked about, in terms of, they're looking for differences. They're cooking more at home. So they're looking to add some new twists on things. So that's important to keep in mind as well. And then, most of us, while, we're conscious of watching our diet, and a lot more attention on like allergies and limited diets that way. But we're still allowing ourselves some, what we call permissible indulgence. So, it's not so bad that you're not enjoying some of your food or some desserts or whatever treats it may be, or beverages. So, it's important to keep in mind. You read in the press a lot about how everybody's worried about healthy eating, but the reality is there's a level of indulgence too that we all want. And then snacking, actually all day eating sort of just happened during the pandemic, especially with anybody who had kids that were home. It didn't, it wasn't like defined breakfast, lunch, and dinner anymore. There definitely was a blurring of when the eating occasions were throughout the day. And that drove, some purchasing of different kinds of products. So healthy snacks can be something that people eat in between meals or in lieu of a meal. You might not eat lunch, a traditional lunch at noon. You might have a healthy snack at 11, and that might hold you until later or whatever. A typical process, and again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. In the beginning, you have an idea. Then as you develop it and that concept gets more fine-tuned, you want to write it out. You might develop an actual prototype. You want to test it with certain people to see what the reaction is. Could be your friends, could be your family, it could actually be with outside consumers. Then you actually formulate your product, you figure out your packaging and your pricing and so forth. And it's important to keep this as a fluid process. So as you go through it, you're going to make some changes and get some feedback from them and be open to those changes. In terms of, figuring out if you're still in the early stages of developing a product, internal and external is where you need to be in terms of helping, or people helping you ideate on your ideas. And anybody, and your internal team is friends, family, if you work for a company, whatever. External teams can be nutritionists, anybody that, chefs, creative consumers, people you may know that can help you on that front. It comes out of your own head. Most of the ideas will come out of your head. If you're interested in a more formal process, there are things that facilitators do. George and I have in the past run sessions as facilitators, helping larger companies develop whole new product concepts. When you actually get your product down, and in particular when you're starting to pitch it to other people, whether you're looking for investors or you're looking for a retailer, you got to make sure that your words and your pictures, all sort of really help sell the idea. And so you need to either think a lot about this and try different ways of communicating what the attributes of your product, the benefits of your product, how it's going to look, any packaging or anything like that. It's important that you really spend some time on that, because that's going to help sell whoever you're talking to. Remember that sizzle sells. So it's got to have a strong concept in terms of, performance, but you need to also add some sizzle to it. We've talked about this in terms of getting outside input on your ideas. Don't forget that whatever you create in your kitchen or your basement or your garage or whatever it is, or in a small commercial kitchen, once you get and scale it up, it's going to change. And George will talk more about that in his session. But you need some outside help usually when you're going to really scale up for production. So, outside developers, one of the ones that George will talk about is the people at Drexel University. If you go to a co-packer, they can help you scale it up and make some adjustments for you in your recipe as well. But be prepared for that once you get larger, you're going to have to wrestle with that part of it. It'll never come out as the exact same as what is coming out of your kitchen. Packaging is real important. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Jeff. If you were in that session, logos and all that and packaging matter. From a material standpoint, it matters. You have to think about that, how it's packaged, the way it's going to be cooked, the way it's going to be shipped, the costs of that packaging, the environmental impact is a much bigger force today than it was a few years ago about that. People pay more attention. If you're overpackaged, they're going to be upset about that and they might avoid buying you. So you need to think through that, but don't forget it's got to be, all the deliverables of convenience and all that matter as well. So don't overcomplicate it, but also make sure you're delivering against the essentials of what the consumer wants. And then the visual impact is really important as well. Again, we're talking about sizzle sells. If you're on a shelf at a retailer, or even if you're at a booth in some community event, the way it looks in those 2 or 3 seconds that people might glance at it on the shelf is critical. So you want to make sure that it's really doing a great job that way. Pricing, George has talked a lot about pricing in his session earlier. This is here for you to go through and remember as you go through it. And when you get to this stage of what you're talking about, but it's definitely something that you want to focus on and not take lightly. From a promotion perspective, we talked last week again, create some awareness and trial, and then some repeat. And don't forget, as George took us through last week, you got to address what's in it for the retailer. It won't move on the shelf just because you like it and it's got a nice, pretty package. If there's not something in it for the retailer and you're not solving one of his needs, it won't work. And then this is something that we do for larger clients, in terms of an opportunity assessment. This is when you get a little bigger. And again, this is just here for your background. But basically what we do is we go through all of the key elements that we've talked about over time, and then we rate your ideas on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 on how well it's delivering against that. So in the case, let's say for strategic value, we might work with a company that's making a certain line of foods, and then they want to test a new product in like a whole different category. And that might not be a great strategic fit for their company, even though it looks like an attractive opportunity. So it's larger picture things that we need to address. So this next section is somewhat hot off the presses. This is all from IRI, which is a very well-respected global research organization. And every year they do a report called the New Product Pacesetters, and they identify new products that were in grocery stores that were successful and analyze what made them successful. And it gives insights as to where consumers are in terms of acceptance for products. Now, with that said, 2020 was a different world for most of us. A very difficult time to introduce new products in a grocery store because of COVID. So it's a bit of a blip that way. But from an overall research standpoint, this grid on the right shows you the various things that are driving consumer behavior. So, we're working more at home, we're working out more at home, right? We talked about consumption shifts. So there's a lot more food being eaten at home than there was out of home in 2020 and so far in 2021. People were doing a lot of work in their house, in terms of both improvements to the structure or whatever, different rooms, adding offices because people were working from home, and then digital upgrades. People were buying, better Wi-Fi or more Wi-Fi, or actually get access to Wi-Fi or streaming services, and watching more television. So there was lots of digital activity happening that wasn't necessarily happening before that. Leisure and holidays was a very different picture, right? We all remember how difficult that was to have major holidays without many people around. And then obviously shopping shifts down here, in terms of where people shopped. There were, for the first time in a long time, you'd go to a store and see empty shelves. So then there was some panic buying, because people were worried they weren't going to have enough of something, and that made the problem even worse because of some supply chain issues. And then obviously the whole online experience, and people shopping and getting it delivered or click and collect, were big shifts. So all that's as background as to what's going on in the consumer's world. And then that delivers against these four elements. IRI is saying these were trends they're seeing in what consumers are interested from new products. They want premium and indulgent projects. We talked a little bit about indulgence a minute ago. They definitely want convenience, as they usually do. Health and wellness is a growing area, and the whole sustainability issue. So if your product or your service delivers on any of those key pillars, you definitely want to make note of that and bring that out in your marketing communications or your sales pitches or whatever. Okay, so just to give you some sense, there were 33 million new lunch and breakfast occasions at home because of people being at home more. So what that meant was some of these products did better because you're not just packing a sandwich anymore for your partner or your kids or whatever. Now you're home, you can use some frozen food for home for breakfast, for lunch, whatever it might be. And then we know for sure that paper goods were definitely in more demand. You're home more, so you need more of it. And then because there were shortages, people bought even more of it as a result. Cleaning products were much bigger. Obviously, early on, all the hand sanitizer stuff was a huge growth category for lots of these retailers until then you couldn't find it. So big shifts that way. As one example, Starbucks, which many of us used to drive to Starbucks to get our coffee. Well, if it's not open or whatever, you're afraid to go out, you want it at home. So their retail product did incredibly well for people who wanted the same experience, or not the same experience, but a similar experience, even though they couldn't go out. So in terms of numbers, it was the fourth highest selling new product of the year. Out of all the products that were introduced, which are thousands of products that are introduced every year, it had 100 million in sales in year one. It got a lot of distribution right out of the gate. 5% had tried it. That's a lot. That's a big trial number when you think about that. There's 150 million households, and they had a fair amount of satisfaction, which means that there's going to be repeat purchase, right? So they had 53% repeat purchase. So that's a big win for them, and it gives you a sense of, so if you just look at that, Starbucks is bigger than all of us have in our pocket, but the package is beautiful. It tells you clearly what it is. It's got great appetite appeal. It's convenient. It hits on all those. It's indulgent. It hits on all those things that we just talked about a slide or two ago. So you can see why that's been a huge success. Next one is ice cream and frozen treats. No surprise here with kids home more, where the rest of us were looking for some indulgent treat for ourselves, if you will, because it was a tough year. And so these are some of the products that did well. On the bottom, you've got Haagen-Dazs that's got some bourbon in it, or which that's an interesting combination. Ben & Jerry's has always got some really cool products out there. Twix and their ice cream bars. Some healthy ones on the side. Outshine is a very healthy, and Mimo are very healthy products in that frozen treat section. So it was attracted to them. Rebel is also a very healthy product for an ice cream treat. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So Rebel is, and if you're not familiar with it, low carb, healthy fats, keto friendly, no added sugar. So it's it hits on lots of those hot points that consumers are looking for in their foods today. So in this case, 5th highest selling product in launch last year, reached just about $100 million. Got great distribution. Over half the stores in the country took it on. It's got about 2% of trial in the beginning, and it's up to 3% now. That's pretty high because not all households will purchase ice cream out of a grocery store. So the universe is smaller, and 54% repurchased it. So that means they really liked it. So that's another good indication of what's going on. Again, the package, it's very pretty and simple. It jumps off of a shelf or out of the freezer case. It's got flavors that people want. It's got all those hot, health benefits that people think they want. And obviously it must have tasted good, because for 54% of the people to buy it again, it had to deliver on taste. So again, that's what's driving the success there. Another one is Beyond Meat, which most of us have seen, or Beyond, in this case, Beyond Sausage. And then Oat Milk, or Planet Oak, which is a milk, and other dairy products. Sustainability clearly is that third pillar we talked about. Plant-based, seeing a huge increase in 2020 and 2021. 36 of the top 100 performers in their tracking were plant-based, so over a third. That's pretty impressive, because most of us didn't know what plant-based was, a year and a half or 2 years ago. And they account for a good size of the market. So these are, again, some of the ones that did well. 52 million for Beyond Sausage, 52 million for pistachios and different flavors of pistachios. Oat Milk is up to 50 million. And the grain-free tortilla chips is another 40 million. So these are big numbers for sales. And, it's another indication. And again, if you look at it from a packaging and selling perspective, the package is really pretty. It grabs you on the shelf. It clearly communicates, what the benefits are. Planet Oat is talking about no sugar added. This is talking about grain-free and paleo and vegan. Everybody is pretty familiar with how good pistachios are, and so that sells by itself. And then Beyond Meat is talking about the plant-based that it is. So those are, again, another set. Here, Beyond Sausage, obviously, as I said, was a huge winner. It got about 2% trial, which again is very high for a plant-based product, because most of us are not that familiar with the whole idea yet. Most of us consumers, I should say. And then on the beverage side, as some of you may be familiar, clearly there were some new things happening in beverage. Energy drinks are huge. The whole combination of beer and seltzer is a new thing. You've got ciders that are spiked. You've got all kinds of all natural fruit. You're blending things. So Coronas, doing a blended drink. It's not just a beer. Same thing with Bud Light. So clearly, the whole combination of beverages, both branding and going into new categories, is one of the things we're seeing a big trend of. So overall in this report, there were 3 big trends that they think are going to continue on, and that we'd all want to pay attention to as we're thinking about our own products. So the first one is self and societal care. Anything to do with nutritional benefits, supplements, anything that helps you, whether it's proven or not that you can't lie about it, but you don't have to go get FDA approval, is what I mean by it. If it's got some of those nutritional benefits or supplements in it, that would be a good thing to talk about. Anything, post and pre and post workout, people are looking for products that way. More people are working out and they're looking for things that replenish them that way. And then sustainable and renewable packaging, as we've talked about, is important. Indulgence, again, permissible indulgence is an okay thing. And so it's okay to be talking about those things. Premium is important. Customizable products or personalized products are a good thing if you can do that. And then smaller portions, and reflecting those indulgent treats is important. If you notice, those ice creams that we're doing well, they're all pints. They're the smaller or version of it, because most of us, if we're looking for an indulgent treat, we don't want to buy a whole big gallon of ice cream, because it just sort of fights that whole idea that it's okay for me to have a permissible indulgence. So they're all smaller packages. And then the last piece is convenience, meal kits, frozen meals, plant-based. The whole small kitchen appliance thing, I don't know if any of you did purchase an air fryer during the COVID situation, but definitely they grew dramatically. And now there's a lot of air fryer products out there. And then I read recently where one of the things that we're looking for now, like for some of my clients, is recipes that are developed around an air fryer concept instead of just other stuff, because there's so many more air fryers all of a sudden. So that's a thing to consider. It looks like it's an appliance that's around for a while. Single serve coffee is certainly another one. Drink pods, different ways of doing that. And then new packaging innovations are coming all the time. Some of them are, sustainability based. They're greener. Some of them take weight out because the shipping cost of shipping your product around gets to be a real problem. We see a lot more pouches instead of cans or bags that way. Gusseted pouches, and anything like that would be really valuable as well. So that's sort of the world of new products from a research perspective currently, along with some broader concepts of what you need to make sure you're dealing with as you deal with your new products. So it gives you some stuff that's been around a long time, and then the newest trends. Any questions on any of that before George takes over and talks about some more goodies? Yes, Kim. Can you either do a Q&A or a chat? Kim, if you want to, either send a chat or put it in.
I'm not seeing anything on there, Mark.
Yeah, I don't either. All right, George.
That was an error. Great. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a second here. Yes. So I actually want to start with Mark's last slide again, and this is kind of again a precursor for those of you that maybe are a little further along, or for those of you that are thinking about our initial two sessions around that food marketing strategy and the brand strategy. This one slide will give you a lot of insight into kinds of products that retailers are certainly looking for. So again, remember, if you're going to sell your product to somebody else, this would be a great slide to come back on and say, hey, we have this data. IRI, as Mark said, is a trusted data provider. And just think about, and again, I have this slide in here tonight, know what problems you solve for the customer and the consumer. So this is going to give you a lot of great information all on one slide, and we will make this available to you as well too. So I mentioned the boot camp earlier. I just wanted to come back and kind of talk to you about, and I have this slide at the end as well if we have time, but this is what we're looking for next Saturday. Okay. So for those of you that are very comfortable in presenting, This is, maybe a slide for each bullet point, or maybe a couple slides for all of them. But this is kind of the flow, and we've kind of taken you through a lot of these things in the the first 9 weeks. I'll take you through a little bit tonight as well. But anytime you present to somebody, you need to tell them why you're there. So we always call that the agenda slide. And typically, especially if you're just starting off, you're going to have to be clear with the retailer why you want to meet with them. And if they grant you the meeting, that means they liked what they heard. They heard what you were saying. So Mark talked about this concept statement. I've talked about the concept statement. I actually have a couple of examples in a little bit of new products from a few years ago to show you what it is. But look at that word at the end, provides benefits. That's the key point. Benefits equal solutions to problems, the way I think about it, okay? We talked about target market in almost all of our sessions. So who's the current and potential users of your product? So again, if you go back to that last slide that Mark had, think about the kinds of people that are using those products. My guess is that people that have an air fryer probably have a Keurig and probably have a slow cooker. That doesn't mean you have to have all three. And that doesn't mean, and I'm thinking primarily younger people like millennials and Gen Z, and people that are more time starved, or maybe people that are living alone. They go to work, they start the slow cooker, and when they come home, dinner's ready. So you have to think about that. And again, you have to be ready to talk about that when you get to the retailer as well. The slides Mark presented, business opportunity, consumer insight. That's 10 slides on there, and I would encourage all of you guys. You all have access to IRI's website. So if you just go on and type in IRI worldwide, that'll take you to their website. And there's a whole bunch of the links you can navigate to literally get really, really, really good data and current data by category as well. So I'd encourage you to do that. And if you pop on to the office hours tomorrow night, I'd be happy to kind of take you through that and show you what all that information is. So how are you going to get your product to the consumer? I talked about that a little bit in the pricing. I'm going to talk about it a little bit tonight as well, but it's really important. You have to know when Mark talked about scaling your product, when your product scales up from your kitchen, maybe to a commercial kitchen, maybe to a co-packer, and ultimately to your own manufacturing, you have to understand how you're going to source the raw materials, how you're going to get the product from where you finish making it to where it's going to sell. And there may be a couple steps in the process there as well. And then Mark did a great job earlier talking about awareness. We've had a couple of sessions on marketing communication, so I'm not going to take you through that, but you really need to tell retailers, here's how we're looking to let people know about our product. And then finally, the last one, and everybody kind of drops the ball here when you're trying to sell something. What do you want us to do? So I always call that my recommendation slide. So after you take people through your whole new business sell-in and why you're there and what problems you solve and all that great stuff, then you have to say, okay, this is what I need you to do. I would like to place my product in all of your stores. I'd like to test my product in some of your stores. My product should go in this aisle or on this shelf or next to this product. Those kinds of things. So you have to have an ask, because people are going to say, okay, you just wasted a half an hour of my time. What do you want from me? So make sure you're clear on that. So the boot camp is your opportunity to kind of go through all these things, and maybe you have some of them, maybe you don't. And again, we'll give you, constructive criticism and say, here's where you're lacking, or we like the idea, but you're not doing a good enough job of explaining what problem solves. You're not doing a good enough job of telling us what the business opportunity is or the business case. So again, I would encourage all of you guys to come and participate. But if you don't want to participate, come and attend and watch the other people present too, because we can definitely learn from other people as well. Okay. So I talked a couple of weeks ago, and I said we're not going to talk a lot about the food science part, the actual how do we make products, but I am going to touch on that a little bit tonight. And unfortunately, our colleague from Drexel was unable to join us tonight, John Deutsch. So he was nice enough to share his information. For those of you that are in or around the Philadelphia area, you know where Drexel University is. It's in West Philly. So I'm going to take you very quickly through their food lab. So this would be an example of, you would come to somebody like Mark and I to kind of help about the strategy and the planning and the thinking and the research and the segmentation, all the stuff we've taken you through the last 9 weeks. And then we would typically hand you off to somebody like Drexel Food Lab, or actually have another couple of examples here as well, because we are not food scientists, they're food scientists. And they'll be able to take your recipe and scale it, or take your recipe. Now I have a couple of examples and there's a couple of case studies of what they've done. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each slide, but again, I would encourage you, when you get access to this presentation, for those of you that are in a product development phase, go back over each of these case studies that I'm going to go through quickly and see the kinds of things that they did for other companies, and then understand what that might have to be for you. So it'll be a little clearer in a couple minutes. Okay, so Drexel Food Labs actually student-driven, faculty run. Okay, and it's pretty cool. So this is a great picture of what they do. They're in a kitchen. They have a commercial kitchen. For those of you that are concerned about some legal issues, you would sign a non-disclosure. There's a whole bunch of different things they kind of work through there. But these are the things that they help with. Okay. Mark and I and people like us would definitely help with the product ideation, because that's obviously thinking about the customer consumer. Jeff Marshall, who you talked about, would not be involved in the actual design of the product, but certainly how the product's portrayed. And then the product development and recipe development would be an iterative process with people like John Deutsch and people like the food scientists, and then people like Mark and myself. So that's where we work collaboratively with. Maybe we're doing a concept test in marketing research. Maybe we're doing a flavor sort. Maybe we're looking for preferences on pack size. So that's typically where Mark and I, or people like us, would work with the product development people as well. Again, depending on your budget, they say affordable, sustainable, delicious, healthy food products. It all depends on what your budget is, but you can certainly talk to them for free. So it doesn't cost you any money to talk to them. So again, Mark talked about some of these trends going on, and obviously these people would be considered foodies. So doing good by doing well is certainly a concept, a corporate social responsibility concept, that a lot of companies have been following for the last 10 or 15 years. Yes, we are in business to make money. Yes, we need to make a profit to survive and thrive, but you can do well by doing good. So here's how it works a little bit. And again, I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but if you're interested, John's contact information is at the end of his piece here. And again, you can just go in and Google Drexel University Food Labs, and John Deutsch's name and phone number will come up. So they can either help you develop the product, okay, and they might even be interested in helping you commercialize the product. So again, not for detailed discussion here, but they have worked with people where they've actually taken a stake in that business and a stake in that product. They have a huge network of people, and their network of people is different than Mark's network of people and my network of people, because they're in, you may have heard the term front of house, back of house. These are all back of house people. These are the chef people. These are the product development people, the researchers, quality control, quality assurance, all that good stuff. And again, they provide research. We provide research as well. So here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but Mark kind of took you through this here, right? So first is, what's the scope of the project or product? Then we do that external analysis. We go off and do some information search. We become informed. We gather information. We put that into a plan. So this kind of ties back to our first session on food marketing strategy, our second session on brand strategy, our session on consumer behavior. Everything's kind of intertwined here. And then they would physically create a product. They might play around with the formulation. They might do some internal taste tests. They might do some consumer taste tests. And again, this would be where somebody like Mark or myself would be involved in this whole process. And then once you get feedback on the research, they might come back and say, okay, we need to add a little more sugar. We need to make this a little less salty. We need to add a little more acidity to it. All those kind of food science things that they talk about. Okay, so I'm not going to go into their, their engagements. You go back and look at that. But again, they're able to work with people in a lot of different ways. And a couple of my clients have actually worked with them very inexpensively, and they've helped them launch products. They've helped them clean up their label, and they've helped them do some, stuff for concept testing as well. So here's some of their clients. Again, for those of you that are in Philadelphia, or all of you guys should be familiar with Beanbo. It's an international company. McCormick Spice is the #1 spice in the United States. Aramark's headquartered in Philadelphia. They do a lot of food service for colleges and schools and institutions and things like that. If you're from Philadelphia, you definitely know Amoroso's. It's a bread bakery that's been around for a long time. So some of these others I am actually unfamiliar with as well. So here's an example of, I'm going to take you through a couple really quick. This was a startup. So this is actually founded by 2 Drexel food graduates, and their goal was to reduce food waste. So again, I'm not going to take you through all this, but if you look here, opportunity, action, and outcome, these would be the kinds of things you should be thinking about when you formulate your plan. Second one, Amoroso's. This is a great one. So they were trying to tweak the recipe a little bit and reduce sodium. Now, obviously, for those of you that that like food, salt enhances the flavor of food. Too much salt's not good. Not enough salt is not good either, because we can't really taste anything. So what they were actually doing here was trying to do that. If you look down the bottom, they were actually, it was more of a food service focus. So schools, hospitals, agencies, places that are requiring people to supply food to them to meet certain nutritional profiles. This was for Aramark, and Mark talked about one of these trends, the plant-based trend. So here's the opportunity: vegetarian and vegan options for prospective college and university accounts. So again, when we talk about consumer segmentation, we always say that people that are, again, I'm making a general statement here, but people that are more educated and people that are more affluent tend to want for those premium products that Mark talked about. So colleges are a great opportunity for healthy or perceived healthy food products to sell their, sell their things there. Okay. And again, remember, Aramark sells food to a lot, manages food for a lot of universities and manages food for a lot of high schools and grade schools. This is another one, fresh cut. How do we take remnants from fresh cut vegetables? So this is a sustainability play. All right, so think about when you throw the apple skin out, the potato skin out, those kinds of things. This was a Hawaiian sauce company. They actually started off as a food truck. So I know I spoke with a couple of you that are either thinking about starting a food truck. In our first session, we actually had a young lady who went from a food truck to her own retail restaurant. So you can go both ways. But this is a great example of this brand that built up a little bit of a following with the food truck, and then went to go to create a product that could be sold at retail, could be sold in a lot of different places. Mother Butter, nutrient-specific product that fulfills the original mission of improving women's health. Okay, so back on the target market, women's health while meeting a broader nutritional need for all. So they're not saying that you have to be a female or a mom to eat this, but what they are saying is she's our primary target market. Okay, so I'm going to kind of cut to the chase. Here's John. John's come on and helped us out a couple of times. I've actually worked with John on projects, and Rachel and Lindsay. And again, for those of you that are interested in contacting John, we have this information on the presentation. We share it with you. And also, as I said, all you really need to do is go on in your search engine and put in Drexel University Food Lab. John's name will come up, and he'd be happy to talk to you. So let me stop there for a minute. Any questions on that? Anybody have any questions? Just type them in the chat or the Q&A.
Yeah, Kim had just said that she had a food lab near her.
Oh, nice. I see that. Okay, great. Yeah, they're all over the place. So for those of you that are not in the Philadelphia area, again, you should be able to find something like this. Assuming typically it comes out of a university that has a great food science program. So that's probably where I would look. Now, obviously, they're in business. They need to make some money too. So there might be a little bit of financial expense on your part, but certainly cheaper than hiring somebody to actually do this straight out on your own. So, okay, great. Let's continue. And we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. So perceptions, reality. Well, I'm back on this again. So I made it into every one of the presentations I've done. So think about that from a new product standpoint. Think about that from the products, the 5 new product pace setters that Mark shared with you. Some of those were established brands. One, like Rebel, I've never heard of. I'm actually going to go out and try the product. So even though I'm in the business, I have not seen that product. One that I did see that it looks very similar to Rebel is Halo Top. And that was really popular about 4 or 5 years ago. So again, think about this. When you form your food marketing strategy, when you form your brand strategy, when you present yourself and present your product to people, they are going to form an opinion on you right away. And that's their perception, right? When we talked about creating value in that first lecture on food marketing strategy and Mark's piece on brand strategy, it's perceived value. It's between the ears of the consumer. Okay. So this is my last chance to talk to you guys about planning. You have to have a plan. You have to have an overall, we'll call it overall umbrella marketing plan. That's kind of like what we talked about in the food marketing strategy session. Then within that overall plan, you need a brand strategy plan. And then within that, you need, we call it the 4 Ps, right? You need a product plan. So we're going to talk to you about that tonight a little bit. Mark gave you some guidance. I'm going to give you a little more. You need a pricing strategy. You need a communication or promotion strategy. And again, you need a distribution or place strategy. All right. So you have to plan, get this stuff down on paper. Think about some of those slides Mark just shared with you. And this is the second or third time I've had this slide up. When you look at data, when you read a report, when you present yourself to others. So the boot camp again will give you a really good chance to do that. People are going to say, well, so what? What does this mean? Why do you feel that way? And how is this going to help me? Or how are you going to implement? So anytime you're doing this, come back and ask yourself these 3 questions. So what does this mean? Why do I feel that way? And how can we use this data to our advantage or use this idea to our advantage? So again, this is the only kind of textbooky slide I ever use. But at the top, you have to know who your customers are. Obviously, you should know about your company, or if you're going to use a co-packer, about their company. If you're going to sell to specific retailers, you really need the understanding about them. So that will also be a collaborator. You definitely need to understand who your competitors are. So when we talked about the SWOT analysis, when we talked about economic value proposition, people are going to compare you and your product to something. Everybody has a competitor. Everybody has a competitor. And then when we talked about value, we talked about this thing of understanding how to group your customers, segment, understanding how to pick out who's important, and then understanding how to position your product in the mind of the customer. And then ultimately, again, for us to be successful, we have to get customers, we have to keep customers, and we have to develop customers. Just let me come back to this for a minute. One of my favorite quotes here. If you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it well enough. So that's why when we're asking you to come to the boot camp, you do not need a 50-page PowerPoint. Nobody wants to see a 50-page PowerPoint. You need a couple of slides and a compelling story. That's all you need. And obviously, we're selling food products here. Bring the product, let people try it, right? We don't need to be complicated here. We need to explain everything simply. My money slide, who you are, what you do, how you're different, why you're better. And again, most of you are up here. Most of you either have a great product that your family and friends love. Maybe some of you have commercialized it already. So this part, everybody spends a lot of time on up here because they think that again, their hot sauce, their simmer sauce, their marinade, their muffins, whatever it is, are the best. What makes them the best is this, that you are different versus something, but what makes everybody money is that you're better than the people that you're competing with. So just because you're different doesn't mean you're better. You have to solve a problem for either one person, if it's an expensive, upscale product, and Mark talked about permissible indulgence. So again, I'll think back to that pint of Rebel ice cream or whatever, kind of frozen treat it is. That's probably $5 or $6 just for that little pint. For those of you that buy ice cream, you can buy a half gallon of ice cream for $3 or $4. So what makes 16 ounces worth more than 64 ounces? And that's that perception, right? That's that perception. All right, so let's talk about economic value proposition a little bit here again. So for those of you that are seeing this for the first time, there's 3 things when you develop and present your product that you can give customers and consumers. Less of something, the same of something, or more of something. And then remember, it's less, same, or more compared to whatever their frame of reference is. And there's three things that consumers are going to give you: less of something, the same of something, or more of something. So as an example, if we think back to Rebel, that's more for more. They're not giving you physically more product, but they're giving you all those things that people ask for: low net carbs, keto friendly, small, small serving size, low calorie, permissible indulgence. So you can always, if you're able to build your product and brand around this more for more, you will always have a very defendable position, because people are willing to pay more for quality. People are willing to pay more for quality that has a great story. People are willing to pay more for quality with a great story from somebody who they believe in. So there's a lot of great reasons to do this here. And as I said when I presented this the first week, you can make money in any of these boxes except this one. So if you develop something that somebody looks at and says, well, that's the same product at the same price as the product that I already have, why would I switch? So you and the people that are helping you create your marketing and positioning need to figure out which of these boxes works for you. And that's how you execute your marketing communication around that box. When we talk about segmenting the customer, we look at profiles, behaviors, and attitudes, or I like to say characteristics, descriptors, and benefits. So the who is always easy, right? That is how we can describe people: male, female, tall, thin, black, white, rich, poor, educated, not educated, upper income, middle income, lower income, warm climate, hot climate, north, south, east, west, US, international. Those are facts. So that would be descriptors. And then we talk about behavior. So if you think back to that slide that Mark had of all the beverages, 5 years ago, there was zero spiked seltzer beverages 5 years ago. And now think about, for those of you that are familiar with that category, and for those of you that are lucky enough to either go down the beach or the shore or the lake or whatever, you see way more spiked seltzer cans, at least I did the last couple summers, way more spiked seltzer cans than beer cans. So that's an example of behavior. And then on that attitude thing, or how people think, do people that drink spiked seltzer think differently than people that drink beer or spirits or don't drink at all? So that would be an example of really understanding the shopper. So remember what consumers want when you're developing your products. Is this for me? They need to understand what they're buying. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be simple, and it needs to be enjoyable. And obviously, price is important. These are my 4 key consumer drivers: saves me time, saves me money, entertains me, is good for me. And again, remember, for those of you that attend the other sessions, I'm going to add a 5th one, is safe for me. And Mark talked about that as well. So that's one of the major trends that we've seen over the last 18 months come out of COVID. And that is that people expect their food to be safe, and people expect, however they get that food, to be safe, the process of how they procure the food to be safe. So as we talk right now, in most of the country, we've seen a spike. I just saw some data last week on Open Table that dining reservations dropped 15%. Cancellations were up 10%. So what does that mean for the restaurant business? Is that a short-term blip, or is that a long-term trend? So that would be an example of what we really need to think about. Now, interestingly, price is important, but if you look at this data and talk about that, it's not just money, okay? People want value for their money, and then remember, value is perceived value. So people think one thing's better than the other. Mark showed Starbucks coffee creamer. I just had a lengthy conversation yesterday with my students about coffee away from home, and I compared Starbucks to Wawa, to Dunkin' Donuts, to McDonald's, to Panera Bread, to Saxby's, which is a local coffee shop in Philadelphia. All 6 brands are very successful. All 6 brands have a different pricing strategy and a different position in the mind of the customer. And again, Profit's the outcome of satisfying people's wants and needs better than the competition. Profit is not a dirty word. Remember when we talked about pricing, you have to pay yourself. When you do your income statement, when you do your pro forma financial statements, make sure that you pay yourself. Make sure you pay yourself. All right. So let's talk a little more about the science side of food new product development. These are some slides from one of my colleagues who's a nutritionist, and she shared her ideas with you from her standpoint as a food scientist. So even she, who's a scientist, said you need to have a story. You need to tell people what the product does, both for the retailer and the consumer. You need to tell and understand where the product comes from. So again, back on that health and safety, where you're getting your ingredients. Is it a trusted source? Are the ingredients that you're putting into your product perceived healthy? Great. And then where does your product belong? Okay. People are more demanding now more than ever. They want, Mark talked about clean labels. That's been a trend for about 5 years. Simple ingredients with names they understand and can relate to. Products that are good for both their health and the people that they love too. So remember, if you have multiple people in your household, whoever the primary shopper is really the gatekeeper of everything that comes to that house. So yes, they're making decisions for themselves, but they also may be making decisions for their others as well. And what a lot of people are doing now, and Jeff kind of talked about this, you'll have some examples in a little bit, is this front of pack label claim. So a lot of companies now are actually taking their great information on the facing panel, whatever panel is the primary display panel, and they're telling people maybe calorie, fat, sugar, salt, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, a whole bunch of different things. They're calling that out on the package. Here's a survey. Now, again, this survey was actually done right before we shut down for COVID, but I still think based on my experience, all these things are relevant. So what are the topics that people are looking for? Protein, still important. Low, no sugar, natural, vitamins, no artificial stuff, low sodium, no sodium, whole grain, fiber, prebiotics. So some of these things have been around for 10 or 15 years, and some are a little newer. Locally grown, no cholesterol, omega. Mark talked about plant-based. Now, for people that may not be familiar with plant-based, we have to do a little bit of education, right? So that gets back on the awareness, the marketing communications. And guess what? There's really no regulation around some of these terms other than USDA or non-GMO, okay? GMO is genetically modified organism. So here's a great one. What does better for you mean? Okay, 48% they were looking for products that improve their health or at least healthier for them. Well, how do you define health? Okay, and that's not a regulated term either. So again, back on my perceptions reality, if you do a great job of developing a product that tastes good, you do a great job of developing that package and making it look like people want to jump out of the package and want to eat it, great. If you do a great job of marketing communications and you sell it to the right person in the right store and put it on the shelf in the right area, you're going to have a successful product, okay? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So this is a great quote. Applegate Farms. So Applegate's owned by Hormel. And Hormel, I think, obviously has processed protein for a long time, primarily pork, although they own Jennie-O turkey as well. So this is great. So Applegate's a brand within the Hormel portfolio that really pushes that healthier, natural, those kinds of things, okay? And again, it all comes back to storytelling. You have to tell a great story. So let me stop there for a minute, see if anybody has any questions. Do we have any questions on that? Because I'm going to take you guys through a pretty substantial new product launch. All right, great. So Mark actually had, I noticed in one of the slides, the new Product Pacesetters, Stouffer's product. So if you're not familiar with Stouffer's, they've been around for a long time. Now, I will tell you, that this presentation is 15 years old. And I specifically wanted to show you something from 15 years ago so you can see that what we are telling you today and how we're telling you to do it today is still relevant 15 years later. We've been doing this for a long time. So think back to 2005, full flavored restaurant quality meals without the hassle. That's kind of like their concept. Back then, 72% of Americans ate dinner out at least once a week. So there's your stat. That's your so what, why, and how. Back then, on average, people ate their evening meal away from home 1.5 times a week. It's a lot higher now. And this number here, pre-COVID, was pushing 50%. Some say it was actually over 50%. So before coronavirus hit, people had shifted from having more food at home to having food away from home. Now, what did people want for meals? They want flavor, they want varieties, they want taste, they want large portions. Here's an example of, again, specific things. So this is where Stouffer's kind of did their internal analysis on where they were today. And this is what they identified as opportunity. So Mark had shared with you that one slide of kind of how he takes larger companies through the outline. This would be an example of a large company taking the kinds of things that Mark talked about, evaluating objectively and honestly where they are, and then thinking about where they want to go. So this product was launched 15 years ago. It's called Corner Bistro. Here it is. Okay. Now, again, there's some different things we were doing back then, but look at that picture. That's a great picture. For those of you that sat in the session with Jeff Marshall and Mark, Jeff would approve of this picture. Jeff would love this picture. This looks like it's, somebody just put this in front of you at, nice restaurant. So here's an example of what you might do when you go see the retailer. This would be an example slide. 6 premium varieties inspired by casual dining meals. So we have some data. We did some research. We looked at what people like to eat at restaurants. Premium ingredients. Mark talked about premiumization. We've been talking about that for a long time. Out of home frame of reference that are just as good as meals at restaurants. So again, think about what was happening back then. And still happening today. We have smaller families, we have dual income, we have single parents, we have a lot of people that are time starved. So if some people like to go out to a restaurant and some people just don't have the time to go out to a restaurant, but they don't also have the time to cook and prepare a home cooked meal. And back then, this was priced at $3.99. So think about the frame of reference for that. You could get a box that's $4, and that would basically be, again, most people would say that's a full serving. So you could have dinner for $4. Would you rather buy this box or go out and buy shrimp, peel it, devein it, cook it, buy the pasta, slice the vegetables, probably take you a couple hours to buy the ingredients and cook the food? Or for $4, you got it. Okay. So here's an example of, again, the sell-in presentation. They show the package, they talk about what's in it. Okay. Let's look at some of the words here. So seasoned grilled white meat. Again, not a lot of marketing copy here, but seasoned. Grilled rosemary chicken, grilled seasoned, balsamic glazed. These are words that if you're a foodie might make might make you interested. Monterey chicken, sesame chicken, seafood scampi, chicken carbonara. So the other thing I'll tell you, which is interesting to me from a product development standpoint, if you look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 6 were chicken, only 1 was shrimp. So when we get back to the food science part of this, shrimp is a shellfish. People have shellfish allergies. So that might be one reason why you might not do this. Or maybe on this, maybe the shrimp scampi is made on one line and the chicken's all made on another line. So these would be things you'd want to think about as you got bigger, or maybe as you start thinking about how you scale your products as you move down there. So again, we had some data here that talked about, would people be interested in this? 78% of people that we talked to said they definitely or probably would buy Corner Bistro meals. We call that the top 2 box. So definitely would buy, probably would buy. That's a great number. Great number. 89% of consumers liked the Corner Bistro line once they tried the products. So what does that tell you? Well, that tells you that if you get this product in a grocery store or a Walmart or a Target or wherever, you should sample the product, because if you get people to try the product, they're going to buy the product. Okay. And then again, maybe for some communication, 60% of people said they're better than other frozen meals. So here's an example of so, what, why, and how. Okay. Here's a little bit on the packaging. So what did they tell you what they did that's different? Updated the logo, better graphics, back panel, restaurant quality experience, square tray, and maybe thicker gauge film. Maybe they had some problems with either stuff breaking, maybe getting freezer burn, things like that. There's the current packaging. There's the transitional packaging. So if you look there, there are some similarities, but that's a little brighter than that. That's a little darker. So Jeff might comment, talk about why he likes or doesn't like the darker picture, let's say. New packaging. There's a great back panel. So maybe an example of, you might see in a fine dining restaurant. And there again, what they're trying to get across to you is that this product could have come out of a restaurant and could be on a really nice white plate. The other thing you'll notice here is they have cooking instructions. So again, for those of you that have a product that needs to be warmed up, you might want to think about that. Is your product great on a stovetop, but not good in a microwave? Can your packaging be heated in a microwave and an oven? Or maybe either or, right? So you have to think about that when you start thinking about your packaging things. These are examples of some testimonials. And again, this is really before Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube and Snapchat and TikTok and all that stuff. But this would be a great example of today. And Mark talked about, social media with Emily, came on and talked about social media. These will be the kinds of things that your consumers would say about you. And then this is where the viral thing goes. So this would be a great example of, if you can get people to say good things about you, then that's how everything kind of explodes. You need a promotional plan. So back on, you need money to get the product on the shelf, and you need money to get the product off the shelf. This will be an example of when they're going to launch. Now remember, this is a frozen food. So typically in the United States, people aren't eating a lot of frozen food in May, June, July, August, but we start our communication here. And as the weather gets cooler, that's when we're going to see more of this stuff happen. Okay. So in this case, they were going to do television, print, a coupon, maybe some public relations, online, some other things here. I know most of you don't have a big budget, but you would need to tell them how you're spending your money. So remember, you need money to get the product on the shelf, and you need money to get the product off the shelf. So here's an example. This happened to be television, where we're going to advertise. Here's how we're going to do print. Here's how we're going to do coupons. Oh, by the way, coupons are still relevant. I know a lot of people don't buy the newspaper anymore, but you can deliver coupons electronically very easily. In store, really, really important. So most of you that are on limited budgets, I would tell you to spend your money on packaging and in store, because you want to get the person, that you want to get the customer thinking about your product when they're ready to buy the product. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Mark talked about this as well. So here's an example of how they were going to talk to customers. So you would share this with the retailer. We're going to do event marketing. We're going to do sampling. We're going to have a savings program. We're actually going to have on people's menu door hangers that we're going to do direct mail. And then we're actually going to do some different, some different ways of advertising here. So here, and then they go into detail on what the event marketing is. How many people are they going to reach? How are they going to talk about this? So most retailers have their own proprietary events that cost money to participate, but this would be an example. If you knew the customer and you knew what was important to them, when you go talk to them, you say, here's my product. Here's what I'd like you to do. I want to do, I want to sell it at this price. I want to promote it at this price. It should go here in the store. And I want to participate in a couple of your programs that I know are important to you. And again, here's the actual schedule of what you're doing. So they're actually telling people when it's going to come to a city near you. Now, why is this important? Well, if your stores are only in Minneapolis, pretty important to you, but you really don't care what's happening over here. So this would be an example if you're selling to a Walmart or a Target or a Kroger or a Costco or whoever, chains that have food stores that have food chains that have stores across the country. And again, maybe some non-traditional media. So today, and Mark spent a lot of time with Emily Rowland in the social media piece, that's where most of you are going to spend your money because it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's not a big drain on your time. And because it's viral in a good way, you can actually get people to talk about you, and people would rather hear their friends and family talk about a brand than hear us talk about them, our own brand. So let me stop there. Any questions on that? All right, great. We're hitting the home stretch here. Okay, some trade promotion and merchandising. So again, remember, you have to give them the plan. Here's what it costs. Here's how it's packed. Here's the price per unit. Here's what we're suggesting you sell it for. Here's your gross margin. This is a really important metric and measure for retailers. We're also going to give you 7% trade promotion. So if you remember back when I took you through the pricing, this would be an example of money that you're going to give to the retailer to reduce the product. Okay, so that number 228, 7% of 3252. And typically what bigger companies do is they give them this amount on every case that they sell, and then that's how they fund these programs. That's how they fund the programs. Okay, so here's some great examples of some shelf talkers. So Mark had some of these stats here. Why new products fail? Well, definitely people don't understand what problem it solves for them. It didn't meet my expectations. So if you have a great package and a great communication plan, but the product is no good, it's not going to work. Not enough money to create awareness or advertising. Not enough money to try the product. Not enough distribution. So this is where I tell people all the time, you need money to get your product on the shelf, and you need money to get your product off the shelf. And for those of you that are thinking about starting this as a full-fledged business, the rule of thumb we always tell people is assume you're not going to break even. Break even means just cover your costs, not make a profit. Assume you're not going to break even for 18 months to 24 months. So do you have enough money? Do you have enough capital? Do you have enough investors to get to that point? So funding's a really big reason why, lack of funding is a really big reason why new products fail. Poor planning for sure. Poor management for sure. Poor concept, yes. So again, we'll share this with you guys. Go back and kind of look at all these things as you think through this. I think poor execution is it's horrible. So if you've done your job of identifying who the target market is, if you've done your job of creating a great product with a great package at a great price, or you have 3 of the 4. So you have, product, price, and promotion, but you can't get distribution. Or you get the distribution, but you don't have any money for promotion. So again, it's really, really important that you have a comprehensive plan here. So what factors increase odds for success? Well, obviously, if you're able to be first to market, you get to define what the market is. Probably one of the greatest examples I think about that is Swiffer. So if you think of Swiffer, there have been a couple of competitors to Swiffer over the last 15 years, but they've basically put mops and brooms and vacuum cleaners and things like that out of business, okay? Disciplined process. So you don't have to follow the plan that Mark and I set together with their food marketing strategy or a brand strategy. We're not telling you that's the only outline or the only plan you have to follow. But I will tell you that you need to have some rules and some plans that you believe in. So when we talked about the food marketing strategy section, we have a piece called the rules of strategy. And at the end of the rules of strategy, I say all the time, it doesn't matter whether you believe in our rules, but you need a set of rules that you're going to follow. Trust me, it's a great roadmap. It's a great way to measure success. Disciplined process. So again, Mark shared this. I'll take you through it quickly. Concept test, assess market, develop the product, develop the launch plan, manage and evaluate. And this should really be a circle, right? This is an iterative process. Marketing is a race with no finish line. I'll say that again. Marketing is a race with no finish line. Okay, we need to keep over and over and over going back and doing all this. Know your target. Who's driving the consumption? Is it male or female? So in this case, when Starbucks Frappuccino came out, definitely more female than male, way more, way more. Okay. So these are indexes here, right? So people, it looks like people that are 35 to 44 were the most popular group, but females beat males in all groups. That doesn't mean that people can't drink this. I like this product, but I wouldn't buy this product. If the product's in the house, if my wife bought it or my daughter bought it or whatever, I would drink it. Manage the price value relationship. Again, understand how that works. That's economic value proposition. Understand what the unique benefits are. You have to solve problems for customers. This is a great one. This product's been out about 15 years now. Go-Gurt, squeezable yogurt. Now this has kind of been trumped by the pouches. So when this came out like 15 years ago or 20 years ago, that was very innovative in the tube. Now it seems like most people are either going to the smaller drinkable yogurt or the squeezable pouch. Not that you can't still find the tubes, but that's kind of old school now, right? So again, I would tell you to come back and look at these lessons for success. Unique, superior product, strong market orientation, more pre-development work. So make sure you do a lot of work up front. And again, I talked about wisdom equals age plus mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Just document the mistakes and don't make that same mistake twice, and learn from your mistakes. So again, I'm going to share this with you guys in the PowerPoint, but a lot of great opportunities to look at how we fix new product success. Think about the 2 or 3 things that are going to have the biggest impact. Don't look at the status quo. Again, remember, you have to be different, but the difference has to be meaningful to customers. Okay, you have to be objective. So one of the benefits I will tell you of the boot camp or having an advisor who's objective is they're not going to tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what they think, and it might not be the same thing you want to hear. Okay, I always said all the time when I built teams, I surrounded myself with people that had a different skill set than I did, and people that excelled at different things that I did, and people that might have had a different viewpoint than I do. So I think debate, healthy debate in that room, in somebody's office or whatever, is a great thing. Okay. So I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here. I wanted to share one more piece of information with you. For those of you that are in Philadelphia, we actually have a facility in West Philadelphia called it's part of the Enterprise Center, but it's called Dorrance Hamilton Center for Culinary Enterprises. And she's actually one of the heiresses of Campbell Soup. So they've been very philanthropic for a long time. So if you're in the Philadelphia area, this would be an example of a place you might be able to go to for some kitchen help. So I think we talked in a couple of the sessions about, for those of you that are making products in your kitchen, in your house, in your basement, in your garage, whatever, that's great to do some concept testing. That's great to do proof of concept. But if you're going to commercialize your product, it should be made in a commercial kitchen or through a co-packer. I'll say that again. If you are going to commercialize your product, if you're going to sell it to a retailer, if you're going to open up your own retail store, if you're going to sell it at farmers markets or whatever, it should be made in a commercial kitchen. So if you go to CCE or the Enterprise Center or whatever, they actually have a whole video on what they do. But this is a great example of what a commercial kitchen would look like. And it's a shared commercial kitchen. So starting off, you probably wouldn't have any of the space, but people have their own lockers, and then they actually share the kitchen space here. So you actually have to reserve kitchen space or kind of rent kitchen space. So I forget what the amount is now. It used to be like $35 an hour. So people that use this, a lot of people that use this are food truck operators. Maybe they go in an hour, 2 hours a day, and they cook all the food in this kitchen, and then they sell it on the food truck. This would be great for those of you people that are thinking about starting your own business, that might want to go to farmers markets, that don't know how big you're going to be. You don't want to invest in equipment. You don't want to have a lease. You know, you want to try to keep your expenses to a minimum. So $35 an hour might seem like a lot of money to you guys, but trust me, for all the stuff you're getting, it's not a lot of money. And the most important thing is you're protected legally because it's made in a commercial kitchen. So again, here's just some examples of what they do, how they do it. Community-based, experienced entrepreneurs. You can do pretty much anything here. Okay, they're there to help. If you go on to CCE, you can actually book online. But again, I would encourage all of you guys to check them out in a little more detail. Actually, I think they have the contact info here. Where is the contact info? Oh, here's the pricing. Let's talk about the pricing a little bit. So again, they have just like Drexel does, they have tiered programs. So if all you need is dry storage, if you have dry ingredients, it's not a lot of money per month. If you need cold storage, either refrigeration or freezing, it's a little more money. But again, this is money well spent versus buying equipment, renting a space, and all that kind of stuff. They do have hourly memberships, but that's got to be booked in 2-hour increments, and you have no access to storage. So if you choose to go in there on an hourly basis, you're going to have to carry all your stuff in, make all your stuff, and carry all your stuff out. But again, for $70, great investment in my opinion. Again, great for food trucks, food carts. If you get bigger, they actually have membership levels. So you can actually get storage facilities. Your hourly rate goes down. You can actually book more time. A lot of great opportunity. There's an online application. You can actually get ServSafe training through that. They help you get ServSafe training, which you'll need for your commercial opportunity. They can get you certificates. They have a whole bunch of great stuff. So here's the team, Val and Danelle. They're the two. Val's the primary contact person. But if you go into CCE, and again, Val's contact info is on the slide. If you're not from Philadelphia, I guarantee if you're in a big city or near a big city, there's something like this going on in your city, commercial kitchens. And I think I mentioned in one of the earlier sessions as well, there's actually a lot of public spaces now that are renting their space out. Churches, surprisingly, if they are a certified commercial kitchen, churches are renting space out. So maybe check your local church out. Maybe go to a restaurant and see if you can rent their space when they're not open. There's a whole bunch of different things, ways you can be nimble here and think about how we're doing that. So some key points to remember. Figure out where you are now, where you want to go and when, and how you're going to get there. That's that planning thing we've spent all 9 sessions talking about. How are you going to determine success? Is it, I need to make X amount of dollars? Is it, I want to introduce so many products? Is it, I want to have my own store in 2 or 3 years? You want to have some objectives that are quantifiable objectives. Please don't forget perception's reality. Understand where you fit in the economic value proposition. And remember, we can make money in all these boxes except this one. But generally, I'm pushing you guys over here more for more. If you can create a product that gives people more of something and they're willing to pay more for that, it's a home run. Understand how to segment, target, and position your customer. Understand the money slide, but most importantly, this last piece here. Why are you better? What problem do you solve for customers and consumers? And remember, there are no longer markets for goods and services that everybody likes a little. Yes, we have Coke. Yes, we have Pepsi. But there's always going to be markets for goods and services that somebody likes a lot. So Mark shared a couple of those data points, and they only had like 2 or 3% trial. But 2 or 3% trial on a pint of ice cream that people are getting $6 for is pretty good. Okay, so for those of you that were with us the whole time, thank you. We appreciate you coming on. For those of you that have just been popping in and out, these are all the things that we talked about in the last 9 weeks. And again, I have some outlines here of the stuff that we talked about. This would be the kind of thing that we're going to kind of take you through in the boot camp, a very top line model on the sessions. And I want to kind of close off with this again. If you're interested, please come join us on September 11th. Even if you come in the morning, if you're unsure, we actually had 3 people the first session that we did told me flat out, I am not going to present. Came to the boot camp, and between the time we went to lunch at 11:30 and the time we came back at 12 o'clock, they had a couple of slides or some data put together. And we had a really good discussion with them. So again, these are all the things that we would ask you to do. You will need to register for the boot camp. So I'm not sure if Divya put the link out for that, but if the link's not there, you can definitely go to the Temple SBDC website, go into the food business series, and click on the link for that as well. So I'm going to turn it back to Divya. I know she put the survey in the link. And if there's any other info you need to share.
Thank you so much, George and Mark. I have put in a link to the office hours, so if you have any specific questions, please do join us tomorrow. Please fill in the survey link that I've put. It is required by funders, the Small Business Administration, so that we can continue to provide no-cost webinars. And I've also posted a link to a resources document where you can see our upcoming webinars. You can go there and register for the bootcamp as well. And I don't see any more questions. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you so much, Mark and George.
Thank you, Divya. Have a great night, everybody.
Yep. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.